That's it. All right. So, does Chayei sound familiar to any of you?
What?
Does Chayei sound familiar to any of you? No? Yes. What about l'chaim?
I heard that word before.
You heard that word before? No? You had it? What do you do whenever you say l'chaim? Yeah, the cup, right? Okay. So whenever we do the kiddush, we say l'chaim. Yes, like cheers. It means to life. Okay, just some Hebrew for you. That's free. All right. So the blessing: bless Adonai who is blessed. Blessed is Adonai who is blessed now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, who gives the Torah. So I'm going to break down the Aliyah and then give you all the resources that I use. Okay, so the first Aliyah, we have Sarah's death at the age of 127. Abraham's desire to acquire a family burial ground in Hebron. Identification of a cave in Machpelah, field owned by Ephron the Hittite. Abraham's request to the Hittite tribe for permission to purchase the land. We'll talk about why that's important in a bit. Abraham's insistence on paying full price, and the conclusion of the acquisition of the land, which means receiving the land, with Abraham paying 400 premium silver coins. Who wants to read the second Aliyah? Go ahead.
Abraham buried Sarah in the cave of Machpelah.
Yeah.
2. Abraham summons his servant and gives him the vision to find a wife for Isaac. 3. Abraham asks the servant to find a wife from his native land, Haran. 4. The servant swears not to choose a wife from the Canaanite.
Good. I'll read this one. The servant sets out for his master's homeland, Eliezer, by the way. Evening time finds him beside the city well. He prays for success in his mission and asks for a heavenly sign. I remember doing this when I was in college. I was like, hey, yo, God, if this is right, please send me a sign, right? And then, like, something happens. Or, oh, my gosh, that's this. No, it's okay. But this one was pretty specific. The sign is to have a girl offer to give water to his camels and, as well as himself. Sure enough, a young lady, Rebecca, approaches and offers to give water to the camels. The servant discovers that she is Abraham's great niece, Rebecca, which is actually pretty much exactly what Abraham asked for, was for a kinswoman. Stay in the family, okay? All right, who wants to read this one? Somebody else. I know you want to, but we need somebody.
This is Rebecca runs to tell the family about the man at the well. Laban, Rebecca's brother, greets the servant and invites him to spend the night. The servant explains the purpose of his mission to the city. The city recounts the heavenly sign, designating Rebecca as his master's son's wife. Rebecca's family agrees that the match is divinely ordained. Rebecca's family consents.
Good. Okay. I'll read this one. Rebecca's family celebrates the engagement with Abraham's servant. The servant insists on immediately returning to his master with Rebecca. Rebecca agrees to go with the servant. Isaac and Rebecca sets out for Canaan. Isaac marries Rebecca. Isaac loves Rebecca. And Isaac finally finds consolation for the loss of his mother, Sarah. Who wants to read this one? Anybody?
Me.
I know you want to. Go ahead.
Abraham remarried and had more children. Abraham gave gifts to his other children before his death. Abraham sent his other children away. Abraham
Bequeathed
all his possessions to Isaac. Abraham died at age 175. Abraham was buried by Isaac and Ishmael. Abraham was buried in the cave of Machpelah beside his wife Sarah.
Y'all, I'm just saying that family reunion must have been awkward. Yeah, with Isaac and Ishmael. Okay, and then I'll read this one since it's short. Ishmael's descendants listed, and Ishmael died at the age of 137. So it's kind of a short portion. It was really only two chapters long, but one chapter was like really long. This was kind of a long portion. There's a lot in this. Like whenever I was reading it, I could have spent a long time in this part here with the role of the servant, going and finding the wife. I could have went a lot of routes, but ultimately what I decided to do is review a little bit from last year, okay? Because I wanted to make sure.
I wasn't here last year.
Perfect. That's exactly why I did it, just for you. Just for you. We're going to do a review from last year. We're going to talk about the land ownership, a little bit about Sarah and Abraham, and then we're going to talk about the veil. And the reason I want to talk about the veil is because it's actually still applicable to today's culture, society, Okay, a lot of people don't consider it, right? But whenever you read 1 Corinthians 11, it will. We did talk about it last year, so I will just add to it a little bit, reiterate, and then we'll move on to Abraham's purchase through a contractual lens, a legal lens. If I say contractual 10 times fast, I'll mess up, okay? But this is the paper I use. This is for free on Wisdom and Torah's website. Rico was kind enough to, at the end. I highlighted, what I did was I read it, I highlight it, and then I put the summary of my highlights on here, and then I put the summary of the highlights on here, so we'll talk about this whole paper in like 10 minutes, okay? I say that it's probably going to be about 30, but we'll get through it, okay? It's actually quite interesting because the form that, I'll just talk about it later. And then we're going to talk about the introduction to the Tamid offering. Do y'all recall what the Tamid offering is, by any chance?
I don't know what is the Tamid offering.
Awesome, you're in luck because we're talking about it today. Okay, all right. So these are the resources that I used. I think every single one of us used the Zondervan every portion because it just really does a good job at laying the framework for us to work with. I use the Avodah HaKorbanos whenever we talk about the temple. Of course, use Wisdom and Torah with Rico. And the JBL, you see that the date of access was 2013. I did not access this in 2013. Rico did. But I just took the screenshot so that you have the title and you have the author and every detail if you want to go back and find it yourself. And then I used the Second Temple app. I literally took that screenshot from my laptop on the dock, so it's like super small. You'll see later I blew it up, and so you can't see anything. So I just decided to leave it the size it wanted to. Please, highly recommend getting the Second Temple app. Please get it, not on Shabbat, okay, because it does cost money. But the really cool thing is whenever you interact, whenever you're in the app, it gives you the Mishnah, it gives you all the sources, and so you can literally walk through the temple and it'll give you all the information as to what's going on, what happens there, why they decide to design it that way. It's quite cool. So I took pictures from the temple app that we will be using today whenever we talk about the Tamid offering. Okay, so first we're going to go ahead and review. See, we're already on slide 16. I should have made the book it. That's all right. Rico's teaching, so we needed the book. All right.
Who is Rico? I forget.
Rico, yeah, the goatee. Yeah, really cool guy. Yeah, I'll introduce you later, okay?
Yeah, we were properly.
All right, so this is for you, Jose. All right, we're going to review last cycle, okay? So the few reasons why I want to do this is because legal things are happening, just like in every single portion. There seems to be legal things happening. But this one, the legal thing happening was with, obviously, with the land, but also with the marriage with Isaac and Rebecca. Okay, Hebron is a really important place for starting the temple service. It actually, I don't want to get ahead. I have a habit of doing that where I'll like see it and I just talk about it, and then whenever we get there, it's like, okay. So I'm going to talk about it later. So Hebron is a really important place, but that's also where Abraham bought the cave. Okay, and that's where everybody's buried. Okay, the veil is actually really important for understanding our culture today, whether we see it or not. It's actually really prevalent, and so I'm really looking forward to talking about that. Okay, so who would like to read these? Go ahead.
Jose. Mr. Jose.
Mr.
So Abraham returned to his young man, and they arose and went to Beersheba. And Abraham lived in Beersheba. Sarah lived for 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her.
Good, thank you. So this is the tail end of last week's portion. This is exactly the beginning of this portion. Where's Abraham at the end of last portion? Beersheba. Where's Sarah? Where did she die? Hebron. Okay, so they were not together whenever she died. Yeah, which, you know what? Reading this portion made me feel a certain type of way because that's actually like my worst fear. And so, yeah. So it had me feeling a certain type of way, y'all. Okay, so Sarah is the wife of Abraham and the mother of Isaac. Okay, she's actually the only matriarch to have her age listed at the death, which is pretty interesting. It just shows her importance. Okay, Sarah was not with Abraham at the time of death. Remember, Abraham was where? And where was Sarah? Hebron. Yes, Canaan. Okay, by Hebron. Okay. So Abraham, this is reminder, a review of last year. If you wanted to go through these more in detail, the PowerPoint is posted on Google Classroom. So Abraham calls himself a stranger in the land. Now earlier this cycle, what was this cycle? Was it this cycle where I talked about Ger? Yeah, right? Yeah, so I talked a lot about Ger, and I'm sure Raquel can add a lot to it as well, and Johnny. So Ger is stranger, okay, and that's usually a legal term, okay, because as strangers, you could not trade, settle, or buy land. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why Abraham needed the permission from the citizens at the gate of the city to purchase the land, because everybody had to approve since he wasn't a citizen. Okay, he was a Ger, he was a stranger. Ger? Is it Ger? Is it Ger? It's Ger. Okay.
Don't break the thing.
Yeah. Frank, yeah. French, right? Yeah. Anyways, so as a Ger, you cannot trade, settle, or buy land, but he wanted to just buy the cave. Okay, there's a cave where he wanted to bury Sarah. Okay, but we'll read that he actually was offered the whole field, the whole piece of land. Okay, which we'll talk about the implications of that. But if he did accept the land, he would have to pay a tribute to the king, which is treason. Okay, so which is interesting because if we had the land of Israel functioning the way it should be, okay, whenever we go there, we have to bring tributes to our king. Same thing here. Okay, so if Abraham bought the land, which he did, but if he lived there, the implications of that would he have to pay a tax on all the produce. He would bring it to the king, and that's committing treason. Okay, so that's a big no-no. All right, the land, back then, it was 30 shekels per acre. I wish that's how it was today. 400 shekels divided by 3 equals 133 acres of land. Y'all, I can't even afford a fifth of an acre. Okay, so this guy is rich. Okay, Abraham. Well, yeah, he was actually very wealthy. The number of trees in the document is actually a legal boundary. So we'll read here in a bit, probably in about 15 to 20 minutes. We'll actually read the whole dialogue as it plays out. But this land in particular, the number of trees in the document is actually a legal boundary. Okay, so it's like, hey, if I buy this land, that palm tree over there, that's the divider. Okay, like in the trees would be the legal boundary, and they would actually count the number of trees, so everybody knows how many trees were in the boundary. Yes.
Is that why the states in the United States are divided like into sections? Because you got Illinois is kind of small, so it's kind of big.
No, that's not the reason why. That's not the reason why. Okay, but we have an issue because 133 acres hold, I don't know, a bajillion people? No. Okay, so there's an issue with the boundary. So if Abraham did in fact live in the land, one, he'd have to pay a tribute to the pagan king, which is treason. Okay, but God gave Abraham a blessing. Do you remember what one of those blessings were?
Oh, be fruitful and multiply, you will be as numerous as the stars.
Yes.
And I will keep your land flowing with milk and honey.
Wow, found it. That's awesome. So, great job. So, if we look outside, in about 30 minutes, it'll be completely pitch black. Okay, but if we look outside and we try to count the stars, can that amount of stars fit in 133 acres? No. So if you broke the boundary, you would have to sacrifice a bull or goat, okay, to a pagan god. So not only are you going to have to pay a tribute to the pagan king, but we all know full well what's fixing to happen, okay, and God's going to fulfill his end of the bargain, okay, and they're fixing to break that boundary. So it's actually really good that Abraham waited to live in the land and to wait for God's way of giving him the land instead of just buying the land and living there, because he would have to pay tribute to the pagan king. Is that why they have wars there? Well, no, not really. I mean, I'm sure they did argue over boundaries. That's definitely part of it, but not the reason why. And then they would also have to sacrifice to a pagan god. So all of that would have been really awkward for Abraham. Okay, but yeah, 133 acres. I think we did the math. It was like $123,000 in that time. So it's probably like $1 bajillion today. Yeah, it's like a lot. Okay, how much per acre? Do you know, Tito? How much is it per acre? Is it like 100,000? Yeah, it's like $100,000 per acre. It's not? Are you serious? 47? Where was I looking? Miami, probably. Okay, so say 50. So that's still a lot of money, y'all. Okay, so I don't have that. So I'm not going to buy that. All right, so anybody want to read this? Go ahead, Mr. Jose.
And Rebecca lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself.
Yes.
Fun fact, the word for dismounted in Hebrew.
Really? Oh, awkward. Maybe she fell and she goes, "That's embarrassing. Who's that man?" Oh. Anyway, so let's recap what's going on. So this is also the tail end of chapter 24. So you see, it's a really long chapter. So really, it's 4 chapters on this portion. But let's talk about what happened. Okay, let's go back to Eliezer. What happened? So this is in the Aliyah right here. Nope, right here. Okay. So servant sets out from Abraham's homeland to go find a wife for Isaac. Okay, and what did he pray for? A heavenly sign. Okay, and then the sign happened.
Oh, the Star of David.
No. So the girl offered to give water to his camels and to himself. From there, they had a big old party. She accepted the terms. Okay, and then this is really important though, because this part right here, whenever she put on her veil, she accepts she's legally married. Okay, so today that would be like signing the ketubah. Remember when we did that? Enrique was like, "You're married now," and I fainted. Remember that? No, my brother had a stroke. So yeah, that's like signing the ketubah today. It's like putting on the veil. Okay, you accept the terms. You're legally married or betrothed, really. Okay. Well, she was already betrothed, but that's when she accepts the terms of marriage. Okay. So you see that we don't really put on the veil, so to speak, now, but we do sign a ketubah, which has the same purpose. Okay. So that's what's happening. Rebecca finally saw Isaac and was like, "I accept." Okay. Yes. Sure. Oh. We didn't do that, did we? No.
Hookah. Is it hookah or hookah?
Not a hookah. Not a hookah.
They
All right, we'll talk later. All right, so let's talk about the veil, okay? So in Torah times, I'm going to distinguish between the Torah times and the first century, whenever Paul was writing 1 Corinthians, okay? So in Torah times, the veil represented status, marriage, and betrothal, like we just saw, okay, whenever Rebecca put on the veil, okay? I'm going to get there. Oh, come on. Okay, just disregard, okay? All right, so in Torah times, it represented status, marriage, and betrothal. A slave or prostitute cannot wear a veil, okay, because it represented status, marriage, and betrothal. Okay, a slave or prostitute is probably not going to be married, okay? So they would have to wear the veil. Now, in first century, especially for our context, Rome, the Roman Empire, okay, we have the toga and the palla. Am I saying that right? Palla? Paya, it's not paya. No. Toga and palla, we'll just say that. Okay, the toga represent promiscuity, which in other words, how would you describe promiscuity? PG.
Like you don't stay with one person.
Yeah. Yeah, so you go around, okay? The palla functions like the veil did, okay? So these are two different clothing items that they would go around. Okay, I guess that's that's PG. Okay, so I'm going to show you 2 pictures. Okay, I'm going to show you 2 pictures. I want you to tell me which one you think would be the toga or which one would be the palla. Okay, remember what the toga represented.
The toga
promiscuity. Close, yes. Okay, so toga, promiscuity. Palla functions like the veil did in the Torah. Okay, so I want you to tell me which one would be more modest according to first century. Okay, to us, it's actually both would be kind of considered modest in our society. Okay, but tell me which one would be according to
I'm not going to answer this
them.
because I don't want to look stupid.
No, it's okay. Which one do you think would be considered more modest?
That one.
On the right. Okay, so we could agree on that. I want you to tell me what are the differences between the left and the right. What do you see? Did you say coloring? Head covering? Okay, we have head coverings. We have shoulders. Okay, both of those actually spot on. That's what I wanted. Okay. So which one do you think would be the palla?
That one.
Good. On the right, which one would be the toga?
That one.
One on the left.
It's for women.
Okay, great. Well, okay. So we have the toga and the pala. You notice, even if like both are technically some in our society nowadays, this would be like really, really modest. Okay, that would be like super modest. Okay, but in their terms, this would be considered not modest, and that would be considered modest. Okay, so I want to go back, reiterate.
Is that the kind of toga and pala that actually wear right now? What is these?
According to Google and the Zondervan, yes. Okay, so I want to reiterate one more time because we're fixing to read 1 Corinthians 11. Okay, toga and pala. Toga represents what? Promiscuity. So what would you show in that time if you were wearing a toga? And? Your hair. Okay, and the pala functions like a veil, so it represented status, marriage, and betrothal. Okay, so which one would be the pala?
That one.
That one? Which one the toga?
That one.
Which one? What is covered in the pala? Hair and? Which one's not covered in this one? Hair and shoulders.
And the arms.
And the arm. Okay, you get the idea. You get. Okay, so we were watching a movie. And Crystal goes, "That's a toga," and I was like, "Yeah, you're right. I never thought of it like that." Yeah. So what's showing? She has her hair uncovered, right? Okay. So that's going to be really and shoulders. Yes. So we're going to see just in a second what this means in first century Rome. Okay. But first, I want you to tell me what thing in our culture represents status in marriage. Crystal, you cannot answer. A ring. It's a ring. Okay. So the wedding ring kind of takes place of the veil. Okay. And in turn, the pala. Okay. So our culture, yes, it looks different in our culture, but what would the impression be for a married person in our culture to English? Sheesh. What would the impression be for a married person in our culture to go out and not wear the ring? Cheating. That you're promiscuous. Okay, you probably wear a toga. Okay, so you get the idea. So if in first century Rome, if a married woman was walking out, okay, not wearing a pala, what would the signal be? What would the impression be? That she's not married. Okay, and would that in turn somewhat bring shame to the husband?
Yes.
It's just like me going out not wearing my ring. I bring shame to my wife. Okay, sometimes it happens because I forget it. Okay, and I always try to have a spare on me. Okay, but you get the idea. Okay. So one more thing that we need to understand is the imperial cult. Thank you, Johnny, for doing such a good job at this a couple weeks ago. Okay, the imperial cult is going to be a form of state religion in which the emperor or dynasty of emperors are worshipped as demigods or deities. Imagine worshiping Biden. Imagine worshiping Trump, Bush, okay, DeSantis. You know, that's pretty much what the imperial cult is. Okay. Now there are a couple things that kind of distinguish what it looks like. Okay. So in public, men would be covering their head. In public and praying would mean worshiping the emperor at that time. Okay, obviously today if I go out in my hat, people aren't going to think I'm worshiping Biden. Okay, that's not what's going to happen. But in their culture, if I go out and I start, oops, I forgot I already have a keep on. Okay, if I go out and I start covering my head, people are going to get the impression in Rome, in the first century, that I'm worshiping the emperor. Okay, that's just what it says. Now, this is not applicable to inside a synagogue. This is only applicable to outside a synagogue. Okay, because they had rights inside the, I messed up my kippah, now it's bothering me. Inside the synagogue, they wear head coverings. Okay, it did. Okay, but this is not. Whenever we read 1 Corinthians 11, Paul's not speaking to the Jewish folks inside the synagogue that are praying with their head covered. He's talking to out in public. Okay, this is a picture from the wonderful Zondervan. This was taken at the. Well, obviously they didn't take this picture back then. Okay, but this was, I guess, made with reference to a peace altar. Okay, so they would bring sacrifices. But notice, can you see my mouse? Can you see this guy? What's his head look like? Covered. This guy, I can't tell if this is a comb over or a head covering. Okay, a lot of these guys.
They did a really bad job on this.
Oh well, they didn't have good cameras back then, so they had to make things this way. Okay, but you notice they have their heads covered. Okay, they would bring the sacrifices. They say that they covered their head because of the sounds of the slaughtering, whatever it may be. Either way, out in public, how are their heads covered when they're worshiping? Like, how are their heads when they're outside worship? They're covered. Okay, so that's imperial cult. Okay, what were they worshiping in the imperial occult?
The deities.
Not just the deities, the emperors as deities. Okay, so is this applicable to inside the synagogue?
No.
No, it's in public. Okay, this picture was not taken inside the synagogue. Okay, all right, so we're fixing to read 1 Corinthians 11, the first section of it. Okay, please remember, imperial occult. This is in public. See, it's already pitch black out. There you go.
What's really dark?
Imperial occult, the pala and the toga. Which one is more modest considered to them?
The pala.
The pala. Which one is promiscuous to them?
Toga.
Toga. Please remember what covering your head in public meant for men. What did it mean?
You're worshiping the emperor.
Yeah, imperial cult. What the culture was like in the Roman Empire. Okay, we've talked about this a lot. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. Probably should have because I don't have a book it, but it's okay. And please understand that the punishment for adultery back then was to shave your head. Okay, so whenever Paul says to not cover your head, it's like, or to not have your head covered is like shaving your head. It's because of this. And remember what the toga represented. Yes.
People that naturally had bald heads.
It's awkward. I don't know.
That's different,
Oh,
obviously.
yeah.
Bald.
Yeah, but like shaving your head, they wouldn't do a really good job at it. Okay, so you would still have you could tell. All right, so this is a wonderful, wonderful map of where Corinth was. Okay, it's on mainland Greece. It's in Europe. Okay, and this is a actual wonderful map of Rome. Okay, this is the Roman Empire. So this is like, when I saw this map, I was so happy. It's so pretty, isn't it? It's actually really pretty.
What is Israel?
Yeah.
I don't see no Israel.
So, I have arrows. Okay, so this is Corinth. This is Corinth. Okay, this is Greece, modern day Greece. Remember, we have Jerusalem is over here. Okay, this would be Israel. Okay, but this is Galatia. Remember when we talked about Galatians a couple portions ago? Modern day Turkey. Then we have Greece, which is Corinth. I try to find others and put arrows, but I didn't have time. Okay, so if you want, please use this map and go through it if you want, just so you can see the scale of where everything is. So this is all the Roman Empire. Now notice that Corinth is in the Roman Empire, right? So do you think they would have the Roman Empire culture? Good. Okay, I'm glad we got there. All right, good. So, can somebody? Wait, I want someone else. You do a wonderful job. You really do. But we got to share. Would anybody else like to read?
Crystal.
Now I commend you, because you remember me in everything and maintain traditions even as I deliver them. But I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ. The head of a wife is her husband. The head of Christ is God. Every man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head. But every wife who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, since it is the same as if her head were shaven. For if a wife will not cover her head, then she should cut her hair short. But since it is disgraceful for a wife to cut her hair, but to cut off her hair or shave her head, let her cover her head.
So, this verse right here causes a lot of issues. Okay? Verses. Remember, we just established a lot of things. So, hopefully, whenever you read this now, it makes a little more sense. Okay, by the way, in the Greek, whenever it says man and woman, the same words are used literally for husband and wife in other places in the Bible. Okay? So, this is not saying, I'm going to tell you what it's not saying. Okay? It is not saying that if you go to church wearing a hat, you're going to hell. That's not what it's saying. Okay, now I was told that. Or kippah, yeah, and that's a big critique. Now it's part of they use it to prove anti-Semitism or whatever, saying you can't wear kippah, that's a sin because Paul says so. Well, you don't consider the culture then, okay? Because He's not referring to inside the synagogue. He's referring to public. And we already thought, now this is not a critique of women prophesying or praying. Okay, he's not saying don't do those things. He's saying don't do it with the head what? Uncovered.
Oh.
Okay, because what does a head uncovered represent in that time?
Dishonesty.
Dishonesty. That's actually a good word. Dishonesty, right? Promiscuity.
I
Okay.
know I came up to be honest about my faith, but I don't wear it in public because I can get paranoid.
We'll talk later. Okay, so what it's not saying is that if you wear a hat, it's a bad thing. Okay, it's not saying that. Okay, it's not saying that women can't pray or prophesy. Okay, now if you want to wear your head covered, fine. That's awesome. Okay, but in our culture, the ring represents that. Okay, that's what that represents. But if you want to wear a head covered, go for it. Okay. So yeah, please don't take this verse that Paul wrote and try to apply it in our culture without trying to understand what he's referring to. He's referring to imperial cult. Okay, so if I go outside and I wear my head covered and I pray, are they going to think I'm praying to Biden? Hopefully not. Okay, so you get the idea. Okay, this verse is kind of pretty far removed from our culture today. We can still use it. There's some things that we can still use. But as far as like me going outside with my head covered, they're not going to think I'm practicing imperial cult. Okay, sound good? Okay, so this is a couple things to consider whenever you read it. Could Paul really be referring to inside the synagogue? No. Okay. Is this about wearing kippahs?
No.
No, it's not. Why does Paul refer to shaving the head?
Because it's
punishment for adultery.
Okay.
Okay. Now recall what the pala covered. What did the pala cover that the
The head, the arms, the whole
the
body.
hair. Okay, covers the hair.
Yeah, the
Okay.
hair too.
Why was Paul so adamant for women covering their head?
Because he didn't want them to shave their head because it was
Not necessarily. Well, yeah, you're on the same lines. Okay, so Paul was adamant for women covering their head in that culture because it represents status and marriage. So and by the way, the same word for woman, again, reiterating, is used for wife in the same book. Okay, it's translated the same because it's the same word. Okay, so if you're a wife in this culture and you went around with your head uncovered, what did it tell people?
Then you're worshiping.
You're dishonest. Okay, as a woman in this time. Okay, so you see the why Paul was talking about that. Okay, is this a commandment correction or a culture correction?
Culture correction.
Culture correction. Okay, so the priests had to cover their heads. That was a commandment. So if a priest read that, they're like, wait a second, what? Is Paul trying to redact the commandment? Is that what he's trying to do? No, sir. He's trying to correct a culture because in the Roman culture, there was a huge movement of we'll talk about it later. Okay. So I tell people this all the time, and they never believe me. Okay, there was a time when I went to a Christian church. Okay, and I wear my hat. I always wear my hat. Okay, ask anybody. I wear my hat literally all the time.
Why?
I have no idea. Okay, so I was wearing my hat inside the church, and they're like, "That's a sin," And I'm not speaking for every church. I'm just saying my experience. Okay, this isn't a critique of Christianity or anything like that. It's just that's what they told me. I'm like, where the heck was it? When has it ever been said that wearing a hat inside is a sin? Well, consider our culture. Okay, where we live. Okay, especially in the South, if you wear your hat inside, it's considered disrespectful. Okay, I remember one time we were having Shabbat a long time ago, and whenever we did the prayers, I took off my hat, and I was praying. They looked at me like, "What is he doing?" Okay, well, because that's what I was raised to do. Whenever we pray, you take off your hat. Okay, same thing like with the anthem. Okay, you take off the hat. That's what I thought I was being respectful, but I was far removed from the culture. Okay, so this is. Relearn.org. Now, disclaimer, this was a podcast, okay? This is not a critique on relearn.org by any means, okay? This is just me trying to find something that can prove my experience with... That almost ended badly. You got it? Okay. Let's drop the camera. So, it reads, throughout church history, we see Christian men taking off their hats during prayer and preaching, and Christian women putting hats, veils, bonnets on during prayer and preaching. Fine. Okay, the practice is derived from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians and is found in the opening text of chapter 11. Okay, So the women putting on hair coverings, that's fine. Okay, but whenever they tell me that it's a sin to wear a hat inside of church, I don't get it. Okay, but now you know where they get some of their stuff. Okay. All right, so let's review really quick before we move on. How old was Sarah when she died, and where did she die?
On 127 in Bathsheba, right?
No, that's where Abraham was.
Oh.
Okay, Hebron. Good. Around how many acres were purchased by Abraham? 133. Good. What did the veil represent in Torah times?
That marriage is sacred.
Marriage and status, okay? Which was more modest in the first century, a pala or a toga? Pala. Sounds like impala. I was like, there's a word. There's a word that I need to know. What replaced the pala in our culture? The ring. What would praying outside the synagogue with your head covered mean in the first century Rome if you were a man?
You were worshiping the government.
Yeah, government. Good. Good, that works. Okay, those are the answers. All right, so now we're shifting gears. Now we're going to talk about this thing, this paper. Okay, so it is kind of wordy. I'm so sorry. Okay, but really just focus on the highlighted parts. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about. So first, I want us to read the dialogue because whenever we talk about the legality of this, it'll make sense. Okay, does anybody want to read?
Me.
I know you want to. Just go ahead, Johnny.
And Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites, I am a sojourner and foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. The Hittites answered Abraham, Hear us, my Lord, you are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead. Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land, and said to them, If you are willing that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and entreat me from me, Ephron, the son of Zophar, that you may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns. It is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me, the presents as property for a burying place.
This is in Hebron, by the way. Okay. You have another one.
Now Ephron was sitting among the Hittites, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites, of all who went in the gate of his city. No, my Lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, But if you will hear me, I give the price of the field. Accept it from me, and I may bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, My Lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? For your dead, Abraham listened to Ephron. And Abraham weighed out for Ephron. Weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights occurring among the merchants.
Good. So where did this occur in the city?
Hebron.
Well, Hebron's a city. Yeah, where? The gate. Now, do y'all recall why that's so important that it was at the gate of the city? What occurs at the gates of the city? That's where judgments were made. That's where business was made. It's like the city hall, okay, in modern, the downtown, okay. In Haines City, we have like 2 buildings, okay, in downtown, great downtown, okay. But that's where everything happens, okay. Now, in this culture, in this time, it was different. Instead of inside the city, it was outside. Okay? It was on the gates of the city. Okay. All right. What else? So you notice that Abraham wants the cave. What is Ephron trying to give him as well? Okay, I can't hear you. The land as well. Okay. Now, what happens if he accepts the land? What does he have to pay to the king?
100 shekels.
The tax and the tribute. Okay. So that's kind of an issue. Does Abraham want the land? No. What does he want? The cave. Okay, so let's continue. This is the last one.
Okay, I'll read this one. So
you just read one. Does anybody else want to read? No? Go ahead, Raquel. Thank you. Raquel's got it.
So the field that was in Marcela, which is the east end of Nets, field with the gate that was in it and all the trees that were in the field. Throughout this whole area was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites. For all went to the gates of the city. After this, Abraham married Sarah, his wife, in the cave in the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre, that is Canaan, in the city of Canaan. The field and the cave that is Canaan were made over to Abraham as property for a burial place.
So we're gonna talk about this paper. Okay, if any of you want to read it after y'all feel free. Okay, it's actually a pretty good paper. It's actually a quick read. It's only 8 pages, so it's pretty good.
I mean, anybody can read it online.
That too? Yeah, if you want, but I have it here if y'all want to skim it while you're here. Okay. All right, so the summary of my highlights. I don't have too many highlights. Okay, there's like one page that's actually really cool. Okay, it gives us the form and the structure of how this would have went down. And actually, we can see parallels in here. Okay, so really, I'm going to read it all. Okay, but really, wherever it's highlighted, that's really where it's important. Okay, that's what I want you to know. Okay, so the passage has characteristics of ancient Near Eastern legal forms from many periods. Okay, it said that it was really only Hittites, so they looked at the Hittites, the way that they would have done a deed. It didn't match up, but whenever they looked at others, they saw that it actually has the form of many other different types, and not just the Hittites. Okay, this follows formal legal negotiations conducted at the gate, because at the gate, legal negotiations are done. Okay, before citizens as witnesses. The purchase had to be approved by the citizens because Abraham was not a ger, he was a ger. Okay, he was a stranger. Now, could strangers or gers purchase land normally? No. Could they trade normally?
No.
Could they settle in the land normally?
No.
No, they all had to get the approval from the citizens. So it's really important that the citizens were witnesses to this at the gate. Go ahead. Would it have caused an issue?
I mean, he had issues later on where they got up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think in this instance in particular. All right, so feudal duties. The feudal duties, by the way, would be the paying the tithe, not tithe, tax, and there's another T word I was thinking of, tribute to the king. That's the feudal duty of owning the land. Just like if I own this land, okay, which I don't, but if I owned it, I'm sad, I'm butthurt. Okay, I want a piece of land. Okay, so if I own a piece of land, what do I have to pay the government? Do you know? Taxes, called property taxes. Okay, so Abraham would have to pay a property tax to a pagan king. Okay, so that's not good. Okay, all right. So Abraham didn't want the whole field because he didn't want to have to pay a tithe or a tribute or a tax, whatever you call it, to a pagan king. Okay, the whole ordeal is basically to see who would do the duties for the king. For its full price, this is actually a legal term, which really means paying in cash. Okay, just imagine this guy walking up and paying in cash for like 133 acres. Oh boy, gonna be today. Abraham will give the full value for the field, and he will pay it. Okay, many observe the last few verses are in style of a deed of a sale. This is actually kind of interesting. It says that Genesis 23, which we just read, this is Genesis 23. This is a report of the deed, but not the deed itself. It's pretty interesting. The report has a formula of a sale contract, and some deeds were described from third person, like this one. Okay, so this is a formula. Title, dialogue with the offer and request, which we have, and the acceptance, which we had. Payment formula, transfer or purchase clause, including property description, which we had. Remember the trees? Okay. Quick claim clause, fines. Basically, if you do this, you have to pay me money. Okay, but that wasn't there. Seals and witnesses and date. But these three things weren't there. Okay, witnesses were, okay, but they weren't listed in Genesis 23. I'm sure they were listed on the actual deed. But in Genesis 23, we do not see the names of the witnesses, nor do we see a seal. We don't have a date. Okay, we don't have the quit claim clause and fines, and we don't have a title. But title, that's fine. Okay, it's actually, in the paper it says that it's actually not that common to have titles. Okay, but in the actual deed that Abraham was given, I'm sure it had all of these things. Okay, but like, see, I always get ahead of myself. Titles were not always used. Okay, transfer expressed in different ways. All these things varied. Okay, so if just because like Genesis 23 does not have a quit claim clause or fine, and the title. That doesn't mean it's illegitimate. Okay, it just means they probably look different, and it was a report. So on the actual deed, it could have been there. Okay, Genesis 23 may be a report of an oral contract, but closely matches a written one as well. Okay, so in ancient Near Eastern deeds, the exact price is listed, as well as the description of the land, the field, the cave, the trees. Okay, all of that is there. Genesis 23 to 17 through 18 could be a transfer clause in an actual document. Let's see if we could read that really quick. 17 through 18. This one. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was east to Mamre, the field with the cave that is in it and all the trees throughout its whole area, and made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites. So you see, we have witnesses. We have the description of the land. We know who did it. We know he paid. Okay, so we have all of those there. Okay. Okay. The deed has the type of real estate. Okay, which is, if I want to buy a house, it's not going to say he bought a tree, will it? Because that would be awkward. Okay, no, it's going to say he bought a house on this plot of land. It has this many things. It has this. It has plumbing. It has this. Okay, not that I know from experience. Okay, but I do know from, like, my brother does real estate, all that stuff. So I know what it has. Okay, the general location by region and the description of the land. We see that it has all of those things in Genesis 23, which is pretty cool. Okay, so this gives a narrative about a deed, a legal deed, given to Abraham. So we have a report. This is really cool. Consider, we have a report. Did I put a map? I put a map. It's somewhere. Okay, so I put a map of where Hebron is. It's in Israel. So imagine we, in the Bible, we have a report of a legal deed that was given to Abraham that gives him the right to the land.
So, about the plumbing at that time?
No. It was non-existent. Okay. So, if Genesis 23 is in the legal deed, which is fine, but it is a report, okay, then it's still a report that a legal deed was given to Abraham for the land. It is rightfully his. Okay. All right, so let's do some review questions. Where in the city did this transaction occur? At the gates. Okay, good, at the gates of the city. Why is it necessary that the citizens approved of this transaction? You have to pronounce it right. Yes, he was a ger. Okay, he was a stranger. What were the feudal duties that Abraham would have to do if he lived there?
Pay taxes.
To? Yeah, to the king, dude. Okay, good. What is a probable reason why Abraham did not want the whole land? Yes. Anyways, but also think about the breaching of the boundaries. What would he have to do if he breached the boundaries? Sacrifice. You know what? I was looking at my PowerPoint from last year. I put bull or loaf. Okay. It's supposed to be goat. I don't know why I put loaf. Okay. So these are the answers for you. Okay. So I don't know why I did that. Honestly, I don't know. All right. So introduction to the Tamid offering. So in this, I didn't bring it, but in the book, it has a wonderful description of what happens. Has all the resources listed, including where you can find it in the Mishnah, all this stuff, and pictures. Pictures aren't as accurate, okay, but it works. It works. Highly recommend getting that book. I love it. Okay, this book, you see what I mean? So the Avodah HaKorbanos, wonderful book. This app, believe it or not, it says Second Temple on the bottom. Okay, Second Temple app, please get it. Okay, instead of video games, y'all, you can play Emmanuel. Instead of playing video games, you can be on the Second Temple app. Love you, dude. Nah, I don't know. So there's a whole bunch. There's literally a lot we can go with the Tamid offering. Okay, but we're only going to be doing the introduction. Okay, so we're not going to get to the point where they're actually doing the soldering or anything like that. We're going to get to the point where they bound it, and then that's it. Okay, because even then, I still have another 20 slides on it. Okay, so it's actually 19 because of review.
That's a lot of slides.
There's a lot to it, man. There is a lot, but I also have pictures from the Second Temple app. Okay, shameless plug. Please get the app. All right, so now it is wordy, but I will read it. Okay, and we'll alternate. Okay, that way we're not all reading. So, by the way, this is tough because The way the book was written, which I love, okay, you have to start from page 1 and read the whole way. Because it goes through literally what happens when the priest wakes up. Like that's in there. Okay. How does he put on his garment? It goes into excruciatingly awesome detail as to what happens. So we got to the point where they do the second lottery. Okay. So the lotteries we could talk about another time. It's actually really fascinating the way they do it. I'm sure if y'all have been to the temple conference, you've seen it, or at least watched the videos. Probably seen it. Yes. Yeah. Okay, there it is. So after the second lottery, the administrator announces to check if it's the proper time to slaughter the morning tamid. I can't really go back too far because if I go back too far, I might as well have put the first 100 pages. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about every single detail that's here. Okay, but the administrator is pretty much the guy overseeing everything, making sure everything's good. I think it said that the administrator is also like the second in command. So, just know. Okay, moving on. The tamid cannot be slaughtered before the day has begun. This is where it gets juicy. Okay, this is where it gets pretty interesting and how it ties to this portion. Technically, it could start at any time. This is in the book. I can't make this up. It's so funny, and I think it's in the Mishnah as well. It's recorded in the Mishnah. The tamid is the daily offering. Is that what you asked me? The tamid? Yeah, it's the daily offering. There's two: one in the morning, one in the day. Oh, afternoon. I'll talk about that's in there later. All right. So technically, it could start whenever there's daytime. Okay, but in the book and in the Mishnah, it says that there was one time where they confused the moonlight for the sunlight, and they did the tamid at night. Awkward. Okay, so they just to make sure. Okay, the Kohen would, who saw this would. Sorry, hold on. The tamid cannot be slaughtered before the day had begun. The Kohen who saw this would answer that the entire eastern horizon was lit up. So the Kohen, the lucky Kohen. This job to go see the sunrise was not done by lottery. Anybody can wake up and go do it. So what they did, they would go and they would look at the sunrise, okay, to make sure it's not the moon. Okay. They would go, they would answer that the entire eastern horizon was lit up. Do y'all recall? No, I have a slide for it. Never mind. The task of answering this question was not given by lottery, so any Kohen could go do it. Okay. The administrator would ask. This is where it ties. The administrator would then ask the Kohen if the light has reached Hebron. Okay, where was Sarah buried?
In Hebron.
Where was Abraham buried?
Hebron.
In Hebron. Same cave. What land did Abraham buy? Yeah, land in Hebron. Okay, so it's pretty cool. Okay, and I have a map here and everything. Okay, so Hebron lies in the far southeast corner of the horizon. And the Kohen would answer yes. So let's run through what happens. Okay, say I'm the Kohen. I'm the lucky Kohen. Okay, I'm not going to go into every detail about how I would don my garments. Okay, but say I did, and I would go and I would go look out to the eastern horizon, and if I saw daylight, I would tell the administrator, and he would tell me, "Hey, dude, did it reach Hebron?" And I would say, "Yes, it did." Great. How far is that? That's far. Okay, so here's Jerusalem. Where's the temple? Yeah, is it in Shechem? No, it's in Jerusalem. Okay, so it's in Jerusalem. Here's the temple. Okay, here's Hebron. I Googled it, and Google gave me kilometers, which I hate. Okay, it's 28.3 kilometers. That's miles. Okay, 17.5848 miles. Okay, I forget. I think if in the morning I Googled, I looked up this for some reason. I don't know why. The visibility in the morning is like 28 miles. Okay, so you can see pretty far. Okay, if the sun's up well enough. Okay, so that just gives you an idea. For us, it'll be around like, well, now with this time change, I don't even, around like 7 o'clock. We could probably do this. Okay, something like that. Okay, do you recall if the temple faces north, south, east, or west? By the way, it's the same if I would look at, if I were to leave the temple. Like the temple building.
If I'm going towards the entrance.
If you're going towards the entrance, it's not the way it faces.
So that's what you mean.
Yeah, it goes.
Where does the entrance go out?
Yes. East. Yes. Because whenever I leave the temple, okay, I will go east. Okay, whenever you're exiled, which way do you go?
West.
East. Okay, which is actually pretty interesting because if I'm entering the temple, I have to face west, which is actually completely backwards from the way that they did it back in the ancient Near East, where they would worship the sun. Okay, the sun rises in the east, right? Yes, east. Okay, I always get those confused, east and west. Okay, but so imagine in the temple, you're like, say, all y'all are pagans, okay, and I'm worshiping Hashem, and I'm looking west. You're like, what are you doing? You gotta face east. I'm like, no, I don't worship the sun god. I worship Hashem. Okay, I'm not facing east. Okay, that's really cool. All right, so yes, it is east. Okay, the font's already kind of crooked, so I just italicized it, underlined it. Okay, so this is in the temple app. Okay, I try to like zoom out as far as I could. Okay, this is the temple building. It's facing this way. Okay, so if I'm entering, I would face west. Okay, that's west. Okay, slaughtering the Tamid. Can somebody please read this for me?
Slaughter the Tamid, Kohanim.
Yep.
Kohanim.
Yep.
And to the chamber of the vassals, 2. Take out 93 gold
and silver
vessels for days' service.
Good.
3. Place vessels on the table on western side of the ramp.
Good.
To outer altar.
Good.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, so I typed it into Craft and asked Craft to summarize into bullet points. So if it's not like perfect English, you know why. It's Craft's fault. Okay. So, well, sorry, I forgot about this part. Okay, I'll read this. So they're by the altar. I'll just show you the picture so we can see it. So if I'm walking up the altar, okay, on the west side there are 2 tables. Okay, 1 silver, 1 marble. We'll talk about that. Okay. Oops. Nope. The Mishnah, this Mishnah details the exact location. This is Shekalim 6:4, by the way. The Mishnah details the exact location and purpose of the 13 tables in the temple. There were 13 tables in the temple. 8 of them were made of marble and were located in the slaughtering area. That's the slaughtering area. Okay, so 8 tables. North of the altar, where the priests would slaughter the offerings of the most sacred order. Upon the tables, they would wash the innards of the offerings as the marble was cool and preserve the freshness of the meat. It's actually really smart. Really smart. And there were 2 more tables on the western side of the ramp of the altar. South of the altar, on the western side of the ramp, south of the altar. 1 of marble, 1 of silver. On the table of the marble, they would place the limbs before they were sacrificed, and from there the priest would bring them up to the altar. On the table made of silver, they would place the 93 sacred vessels. Okay, so whenever they brought out the 93 gold and silver vessels, the way you could remember that, it's going to be on the silver table on the western side of the altar. Now, in the app, they don't have the marble or silver, which is fine. Okay, but one of these would be. Okay, and this is the picture of the slaughtering area. That's where they would be slaughtered. We have the 8 tables. This is where they would bind the lambs and other offerings. Okay, the administrator instructed the Kohanim who won the lotteries to perform the Tamid offering to go and bring me a lamb from the chamber of the lambs. The names are so interesting. Where do we get the vessels? What chamber? Chamber of vessels. Where do I get the lamb?
From the landowner.
Chamber. Well, yes. Okay, but the chamber of the lambs. If I wanted to get a spark for the altar, I go to the chamber of the spark. Well, yeah. Sometimes, though, depending on who you ask, the names change. Okay, but so they would get the lamb from the chamber of lambs. So creative. This is the first of 2 Olah offerings commanded in Numbers 28:3-4. Okay, so this is a picture of the chamber of the lambs. Okay, it's actually I would say unsanctified. Is that a good word? Unsanctified area of the sanctified area. Okay, so if I say I'm looking, say this is the building. Okay, if I'm looking this way, that's how the picture is. Okay, so this is this way. But if I go here, if I keep going straight, I end up going to where everybody sleeps. Okay, so right here is like that wall, and if I keep going that way, different building. Okay, but this area is unsanctified. That's why we can have the animals and stuff in there. Because what do animals do? Okay, so that's where they are. Okay, they brought the lamb to. Anybody want to? I know you want to read. I know it. I know you want to read. Don't pick somebody. Don't make them uncomfortable. It's okay. Let them pick. Go ahead.
They brought the lamb to where the administrators was waiting. So the great Sanhedrin
Convene.
This was the Sanhedrin on any other blemishes. They gave the lamb water easier to remove.
Guess what's in the chamber of hewn stone? Hewn stone. Okay. So this is where the Sanhedrin would be. Okay, that's where they would do all the rulings. Okay, they met there daily, but it's actually really important that they do this. I didn't know this. Okay, but if I have to make sure that the lamb had no blemishes, okay, is it just enough for me to make that call? No. So they literally bring it to the head honchos in the great Sanhedrin daily to make sure it had no blemishes. Okay, which is pretty cool. So the chamber of hewn stone, think hewn stones, that's where they sit, that's where they do all of their stuff. The great Sanhedrin, that's where they convene daily. Okay. All right, the Kohen that had the right to slaughter the Tamid would take hold of it and lead it to the butchering area. The Kohanim, who had the right to bring up the limbs to the altar, would follow. At this point, they would also wait for the gates to open, because they have to do it to make sure everybody can see it. Okay, they don't do things in private. Okay. Anybody want to read this part?
Please.
Go ahead.
Or they did a lamb in the area of the ring. They would not bind the feet or leg at all. No,
No, you got it. No, it was the whole situation was kind of funny.
this
It's okay.
was the presence of the idolatry by their offering.
Good. So they secure the lamb to the area with the rings. Remember this one right here? What do you notice about those lambs? They're fake. I wasn't expecting that. You're right, though. They are fake. Okay. How are their legs? Are they kind of free to roam around within their area? Within the area that they are permitted to. Yes. So this I thought was really interesting. I found everything interesting. Let's just be honest. Okay. But this is interesting that they wouldn't bind their legs or feet. Okay. Because that's how the idolaters would bind their offerings. It's kind of like, I don't want to say inhumane, but it's kind of inhumane. Okay, if you think about it. But it's really interesting because I remember looking at like documentaries and the way that they do sacrifices back in the ancient Near Eastern and even cultures around not that long ago. They would bind the hands and feet of the sacrifices. It's pretty interesting. Okay, so they would actually not do that. So imagine this. I'm facing west and I don't bind the feet and hands of the sacrifice. These people are probably like confused. Like, what's going on? Okay. What's really cool is that those rings actually open and close, which is pretty neat. Okay. All right. So let's review real quick. By the way, that was the introduction to the Tamid. It's not a whole lot, okay, but it's really just kind of a lot of intricacies. I have to go get the lamb. Where do I have to go? To hewn stone, where the Sanhedrin is, to make sure there's no blemishes. You have to wait for the gates to open. Okay. So if you follow, it kind of makes a lot more sense. But what was the job to announce that the sunlight has hit Hebron done by lottery? Was that job done by lottery? Could anybody wake up and do it? Yes. Okay, so it was not done by a lottery. In what chamber did the Kohanim get the gold and silver vessels they need for the day's service? What chamber? Chamber of vessels. Yes, you're right. How many tables were on the west side of the outer altar?
28.
The first word.
2.
The first word. First number. 2. There were 2. One of marble, one of silver. Okay. What chamber did they bring the lamb to examine? Are those stones hewn? Yes, hewn stone. Okay. Who met there daily? Sanhedrin. Great Sanhedrin. Okay. The great Sanhedrin would. Okay. Why did they not bind the legs and feet of the lamb?
Because it's inhumane.
Okay, that's correct, yes, and the pagans also did it, the idolaters.
So they just let them roam around?
No, they had them bound to the rings. Okay, so they were kind of moving around within the rings, but they weren't like stuck in one spot. They were able to move. Okay, so in summary, okay, huh?
No, I was going to ask you a question because you connected it to meat offering because of the wrong, right?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot more.
Well, why did they pick Hebron though? Why not?
That's where everybody was buried.
Oh,
where-
why?
What are you thinking? What are
I
you
think.
thinking? Yes.
I mean, if you read, they said that they believe in the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
So they believe that the animal.
Oh, that's right, and that's where they would
forefathers, so
start.
they resurrect there first. They wait for the light there.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the resurrection is going to take place first.
Cool. Good. Thank you. So, in summary, 1 Corinthians 11 is not about wearing a head covering in synagogue. It's about imperial worship for men. Okay, for women, it's kind of like correcting promiscuity. The way that they were, even though they didn't wear the head coverings, I'm sure they didn't have promiscuity in mind. Okay, they're trying to keep up with the culture, but in order to like not create shame and stuff, you had to correct it. Okay, the ring replaced the veil or pala in our culture. I know people read head covering and they freak out. Okay, they're like, I have to wear a head covering. Okay, let's consider that the ring replaced the head covering. So it's a lot more personal today. If I say like say my wife Crystal walks around out there without a ring, to us we understand what that means. Okay, right? Well, what would that be interpreted as if my wife went out there with no ring?
That's bad.
No, not yes, but it's like that she's single, right?
But she's not single.
But she's not single. So would that shame me as the husband?
Yes.
But it meant, let's turn it around. If I walk out there with no ring, what would that tell people?
It would shame Crystal.
Because they would think I'm single,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, I don't really care about this relationship. Okay, so let's consider the ring with the pala. Okay, that's what it is. Consider it. Okay, it's not just about head coverings. Okay, it's not just about that. All right, Genesis 23 is a legal report of a deed to the land. Okay, before doing the Tamid, they make sure the sunlight hit Hebron.